Morning. I don't usually make YouTube videos, but I've had quite the experience recently with the valve cover gasket that covers the cams and also integrates the positive crankcase ventilation valve, also known as PCV valve. I'm about on my 10th attempt to having things reseated and redone and things like that because of continuous oil leaks, having snapped a number of bolts with the replacement part from the dealer, and it's becoming a growing concern because it spawns off into other issues and other things. So now what I'm trying to accomplish is basically review the work that I've done recently on this car. So let's have a look. I wanted to re-go over some of the struggles that I've experienced with the job of changing the valve cover. This engine is aluminum, which means it's a soft metal. It doesn't have a lot of strength when you're trying to torque bolts. Because I'm a home mechanic, I'm using standard socket sets. When I removed the parts from the originals, there was no problem. Everything extracted, everything came out. But my first problem occurred when this bolt stripped, or it snapped rather, in the engine block. And then it was this one. And then I had that one. And then I had this one. And then this one, oh my god. So, with all this being said and done, it's not that I was going super excessive on my strength. I think it's because it's the in and out, in and out, in and out. And the number of attempts to try to get this under control, under wraps, fix things, that it just kind of exceeded the threshold of what I should be doing by the number of counts. Nobody changes a head gasket 10 times on their engine without them bringing their car to the dump, basically. So because it's a trial and error thing, because there's been leaks, additional troubleshooting, I have gone through the ringer on that one. So I'll show you a kit that I bought from Amazon, and it's been a godsend. It was $50 with Amazon Prime. Again, these prices are Canadian. And it's a kit for doing helicoils. Now you're probably saying, oh, great. For those of you who kind of know what a helicoil is, I had no freaking clue. And then I did a lot of research and it brought this up. And it's a kit. So a helicoil in general terms is a tool that lets you drill out. And then it lets you clean out the hole where your original bore was. I packed the tip of this tool here, so it's got an equivalent one here. I put brake grease at the end because it's nice and thick. It doesn't matter if it goes in the engine. It can handle a little temperature if the residual stays behind. So I dipped this thing in the hole where there was filings from me drilling, and it extracted a lot of crap. Repeated the process over and over, wiped it over, dipped in grease, put it back in, remove, extract. Over and over and over. I did about 6-7 times till I saw the remnants was extremely negligible, like next to nothing left in there. So once the hole is clean, then you can proceed with tapping. So in our case, I needed this tap. So right now there's still a little bit of crap left from having done the job. So what you do is you basically insert this tool into the hole as straight and true as you can to the original hole. Okay, drilling out the original one was super easy. I had a weak battery and it went through really quick. So you have to have your full attention. Don't be distracted by yapping and this and that. Not a good plan in your engine. Okay, so now with this one here, I'll kind of show you as you turn, clockwise of course, because it matches the thread pattern, you'll feel a wee bit of increased tension. You have to use like a adjustable wrench. That's what I use to turn this very gently. Not a long wrench with a long handle, because you have to be able to feel the torque increase. And then what you do is you reverse the opposite direction. So all the crap that it dig up to create threads, you got to back it off. Okay, and it falls in these crevices, and then you continue, and then you back it off, and as you progressively get through, you can get about 3/4 of the turn, back it off. Anyways, it's a little painstaking, a little long, but let me tell you, my friends, this saved me thousands of dollars because I was hopeless. Now, same process goes for cleaning out the new threads that we created. Again, I used this tool and I progressed to a larger one. I think once I needed to get a little bit closer to the body of the hole. And from there, what I ended up doing, same process, clean it thoroughly, take it out. And then once I thought it was really clean, I ran the tap one more time. So this removed the excess grease. It went in the crevice, and it picked up whatever that the grease kind of channeled and brought up, took it out, extracted it. Beautiful. As you can see, there's still some sticky stuff on it, which proves the grease did its job, right? And a little lubrication down the way kind of helps. So next is you take what's the actual helicoil itself. Down the hole, you thread it in, and then what you do is you're using this tool, okay? Now, the part I kind of forgot to mention, forgive me because this is somewhat unscripted here, is how you have to gauge the depth when you're drilling it out. I used one of these tools, and I kind of put it down to the bottom of the hole, and I kind of did a swirly swirl, kind of like this, like to exaggerate my movement. I went like that, and it kind of scratched and etched the edges of the tool in some sense here. I just got to get some perspective on it. Anyways, as you can see, this is a good gauge to how deep you should be drilling. And to be very mindful, very important that you don't penetrate further than you need to and you end up in the cylinder or some stupid circumstance like that. Because this video comes with no warranty, friends. It's just advice. So again, the little curl-tailed area here that kind of goes down the middle, it goes facing downwards into the hole. And like I said, in the tool, there's a crevice. Again, we have to get some perspective on the crevice here. That little hole, or that little tail, will go in this gap, and as you're turning it, it's using it to thread you down. It's kind of like the reverse flathead scenario. Okay, and then once it's seated at the bottom, where you kind of reached the maximum, then you're going to use the tool I was using basically for removing all the shavings. Use the proper size, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take it and give this a gentle strike with a hammer to break that piece, because the head of the bolt still has to come out past that point. Now, you may be lucky, you may be unlucky. I was not lucky. I was not able to extract that piece with a vacuum. These parts were not magnetic, so it didn't respond to like a very, very small magnetic pickup tool. So I took a gamble and I left at the bottom. My gamble paid off. There was no problem. Anyways, once that's done, then your original set of bolts that was used to seat in the engine block itself, let's say this one or that one that I know I've changed, will fit in the thread that the helicoil has created for you, and will allow you to create tension now from a smaller one to a slightly larger one, the helicoil, and the helicoil is torquing on the remainder of the block, or the top of the head of the engine anyways. So now you actually have what you need to equip yourself to do some light machine work. Again, I don't recommend you doing this on a car that has warranty or anything like that. You're better off to bring it back to the shop and have them take over that responsibility and take care of this. My car recently ran out of warranty, and I kind of, like I say, I wish I would have maybe bought a slightly longer extended warranty, knowing that this car tends to be troubled. But anyways, I hope even these principles may help others who don't have general know-how or just a little shy to spend the $50 to get this kind of a tool. It's really great. It's saved me a ton of money. I mean, if I would have went to the dealer and got everything done, they might have been able to get it all done in one shot. But I mean, I was afraid because the last job I had done by them turned out to be $1,000 job to replace this stupid fan because of a resistor, basically an embedded component. Anyways, it's kind of hard to get. There you go. This guy right there, the black harness. There's a part inside the fan that allows you to have the multiple speeds, 3 speeds in all for your fan, and only the maximum speed was left remaining working on this car. So a lot of this car has issues in regards to everything having multiple components built into one for simplicity of manufacturing, but definitely not for simplicity of repair for the home mechanic, and it creates a bigger bill for the consumer at the outcome. I think that's kind of unfair practice, but oh well, I guess the only way to regulate that is not buy the car in the first place. So now, as it stands, my car currently has everything reinstalled in regards to the head gasket. I've added some gasket forming goop in some of the key areas because I figured I've done it so many times that there may be fine crevices that the oil may follow, because I'm using like a bit of a surface like a screwdriver to just remove former gasket and clean it out. So in light of that, I've put some in the areas that were most troublesome to begin with, and let's see if the outcome will pay off. So the next video will probably take after having done a couple test runs and see if I continue to have oil leaks. So now, because formerly I was having oil leaks in this region back here, because I've changed everything all over again, I have to re-inspect the entire vehicle from scratch. Every nook, every cranny. So I've discovered the easiest way to troubleshoot this for oil leaks is to do a dry run where you know that the pressure from the turbo has engaged. So for that, I'll take it over in a separate video. So this is part of the test drive procedure. After I changed the valve cover, reinstalled it again for about the 10th time in a span of about 2 weeks. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of my tools that I bought on Amazon way back when I first had this problem. I had an engine light that was kind of a problem. So I bought a OBD2 Bluetooth adapter for my car that plugs in, and I also bought this torque app, and I set up a profile like Cruze and so on. I was able to look at the fault codes, and then so what I'm going to look at now while I'm kind of performing these tests. I did the first basic test drive with just around the block, no hills, 2 kilometers max, to detect if there's any oil leaks, because there's no sense going far. There's no sense straining the engine, making a big mess under the hood if there is a leak. It makes it that much harder to find, and you have to restart all over again. Don't want to do that. Not interested. So I went for a quick drive. At first, there does not seem to be any leaks. There's just a few little drops of oil here and there that it's really hard to clean up with a rag with accuracy in some of the key areas I've been watching. But now what I'm going to show you is we're going to go for a test drive, and then as the engine's connecting here, you can see some of the values that come in. So the one I want to draw your attention to the most, in my opinion, is the bottom left where there's a vacuum gauge. So right now we're in the negative range. So like negative 16, negative 17. This is when the engine's operating pretty close to, like, you know, service temperature, like regulated to be staying that way. What you'll see is the gauge will get closer to inches of mercury, IN/HG, for those who don't know, the bottom left gauge. You'll get closer to 0. Now, and usually when the turbo kicks in, the pressure will go up in the positive range as we're doing things like accelerating a little harder, or using like an incline, like on like a hill where it's accelerating and stuff. So what we're doing is we're going to be doing a test run that's kind of short in duration, probably 5 to 7 minutes depending on traffic conditions, where we're presenting the vacuum to be in the positive range, and to see if under extra pressure the engine will release any oil. So right now I'm buckled up, I'm seated in my car, and we're recording the instruments, and I'll give you some audio feedback as we're proceeding. So right now I'm just reversing in my driveway, getting ready to line up the street. Okay, we're stopped, put the car in drive, we're proceeding towards the first stop sign. So I'm accelerating gently. As you can see, the gauge is moving in respect to what's going on. So when you slack off the gas, you'll notice it goes quickly into a negative vacuum that the car has to do something to regulate. And I think that's what was going on originally, is with the evap and everything, it just couldn't properly regulate the flow that the engine computer was trying to establish. So right now I'm at a traffic light waiting to turn right, and I'm applying some pressure on the accelerator to make a right at a red light. So there's about a 3% hill right now. As you can see, we're at about 4 psi. We're slightly in the positive range. And as we kind of get to like a non-accelerating speed of like say 50k, as you can probably see on the speedometer, kind of leveled out. The vacuum goes back to like either the negative range or floats into the zeros, depending on like how I'm slightly adjusting the throttle. And again, that seems to be only impacted when the engine's under load, so it's actually using force to push. So if you're sitting idling and you're revving like crazy, this is not a test that will work. You're wasting your time. I've already kind of established that. So now I'm at an advanced green with a slight incline, making my left. And we're going to speed up to about 70k an hour. As you can see, we're in Ontario, Canada, so the speed limits are metric. If you're curious about the speeds and conversions, Google has great tools to convert that if you're wanting to know. Same things with pressures and weights and all that. Very handy. Torque as well for these jobs if you have a torque wrench to do conversions, whether it's newtons or inch pounds or foot pounds. Okay, so I'm on level ground right now. The speed limit's posted to increase to 80 kilometers an hour. So I'm just increasing my speed. And right now I'm right off the gas going down a hill. So there's no throttle and I'm accelerating gently. So part of the test drive that this is conducting is we're going to backtrack our exact steps. This is a pretty significant hill of about 700 meters or so, I would estimate. I'm not great at estimating distances, but generally, yeah, it's a pretty good run. And then there's a light at the very bottom of the hill. So sometimes we're stuck at a red, so we're going from a complete standstill to accelerating to start the grade of the hill going upwards. So I'm still on flat, going a little way further than usual. And there's another set of lights up ahead. So right now I'm kind of cruising at 90k an hour. I'm doing 10 over the limit, let's say. There's not a lot of stress on the engine, as you can tell by the vacuum. I've just released the throttle because I see the red light in the distance. People are kind of backing off on the gas a bit. And the green has changed ahead. So people are kind of just lining up for that. But I'm going to make a right-hand turn to begin my turnaround procedure to head back towards the hill that usually calls for a little bit of the use of the turbo. And making a left in the convenience store real quick here before more oncoming traffic comes up. And I'm just waiting my turn to turn it around here. Someone ahead of me, so I have to wait. A little bit of a blind corner here coming out of this parking lot. Tall snowbanks, so forgive me if I'm not quick. Boom, coming out here. Okay, so a little gas, making a right. Rushing a little bit with the throttle to race the light a bit. Yes, we got it, so we can make a left back onto the highway. And we're pointing in the reverse direction of our first leg of our test. So usually right up to now, I'm taking a breath of air in to see if I can smell any burning oil or anything like that. Quite often we didn't get a lot of smell because there wasn't a substantial amount of oil touching the engine, kind of creating heat and so on. So we're not at the most critical part of our test. The hill is where we start to see a little bit more activity as to knowing what's going on. So again, the speed limit here is 80. Pretty close to it. There's the shade underneath and there's someone in front of me. No need to be on the guy's butt, and I'm on the slow lane in case we have any kind of problem. I want to be able to pull the shoulder and not have to cross 40 lanes of traffic and such. So we're approaching the light at the bottom of the hill. It continues to be green, so there's not, oh, it just turned yellow, but I was through the intersection. So I'm going to intentionally back off the gas a little bit to about 60k an hour, so I have something to use, like a little bit of turbo boost to re-accelerate, let the guy ahead of me go forward. And I pressure. So as you can see now, I'm at up to 8 pounds of pressure. Car downshifted and everything, and I'm back up to 90k. And I'm kind of eased off a little bit because, again, I don't want to catch up to traffic too much. And I'm about 30 feet from the crest to the top of the hill. And the hill's pretty much gone now. It's flat, and up ahead's 50k, so I'm backed off the gas to accommodate for the upcoming 50k zone, kk an hour. So that's basically 30 miles an hour, those of you in the States. Down to about 65 kilometers an hour, and still kind of easing off the fuel a bit here. And I'm getting ready to turn right to go back into the residential area where I live, off the main drag here. So I'm kind of in an ideal area of the city that I don't have to go on major expressways to do my tests. A secondary highway is easier and it's safer. There's more side roads to turn off of for testing for anybody who's new. You always want to leave yourself an emergency out if you're kind of doing testing and stuff, where you can at least pull over, even to the extreme if you have to call a tow truck. Why put yourself in danger for nothing? Don't take the main expressway if you're just putting the car through initial testing like we're doing here. So, okay, we're approaching one of the last intersections to make a left. Controlled intersection with lights. Left. There's going to be a slight little incline here, but it's a blind corner, so I'm taking it easy up the hill because I don't know if people come flying with tall snowbanks. There's people parked on the road. And here we are. We're just on my street now. I'm just about to pull into the driveway. Alright, pulling in. I'm directly in front of my garage. Car's going in park. Put the e-brake on so there's no accidents, nobody moving. And I'm turning off the engine. There we are. So it registers still some variables through the OBD2. As you can see, the throttle being 29.8%, I can tell you that's BS because the engine's off. So some of these numbers are kind of weird. I think it's kind of like how the gauges are set up, that they're not necessarily live, or the graphics don't update. They wait for the next measure to come in to refresh the screen. Well, it's not smart enough to know it's zero. Anyhow, so we've had about a 11-12 minute test run, and I'm going to stop this video just so I can stop screen sharing. And what's going to come next is opening the hood and get some footage of what the under the hood is like. I didn't smell any burning, which the former times I did, so let's hope it all pans out. Oh hey guys, so we're back from our 12-minute test drive on the highway with incline. I rigged up the car with the hood open, trouble lamp, so you can see some of the rear areas that don't have a lot of light. You probably want to do this if you're setting yourself up. Okay, I don't have the most fancy microphone equipment and everything. This is some of my first videos that I put to YouTube. I'm hoping to do maybe more in the future, but let's see what happens. So, looking at this car, some of the key areas that we're looking for is any kind of signs that there's leakage of oil. Now, the camera positioning on this phone is not exactly ideal because it's on one of the sides rather than the center. So getting a good clear shot is not straightforward. So this I know is former oil just based on how dirty it is, and it's a hard area to reach. So I know it's not leaking from here. Also on this engine, I'm trying to get a clear shot of this. There's like a weep hole What do I mean by that? It's like a crevice for where the areas of the spark plugs kind of live. I'm trying to get a proper shot of that, but I might not be able to with the equipment all back in. So this is your coil pack here. So this is what creates the electricity, the high voltage that drives down into the spark plug. The spark plugs are all under here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a super easy job to change the spark plug if you ever had to. It's worth doing, save a few bucks. I haven't had to do it yet. And these are supposed to be rated for a lot more miles than I have now. So again, the trouble light's set up here. And I'm looking into the key areas. So there's a little goop, as you can see in some of the spots, like along the edges around that. That's the gasket forming stuff that I put in. Because I saw there was a tiny little nick on my new gasket, and I'm trying to like make extra triple sure. And it's possible that I am leaking oil. I think I still see some. Kind of in the same area I had before, but a lower, lesser volume. So I'm trying to expose under here. What was happening is that the oil would circulate and kind of get pooling in some of these stupid areas and crevices along down here. Kind of where this plastic piece here meets the engine down in the crevices below all this. And it was splashing like crazy, like over here. And you can see splatter, and I've cleaned it up a number of times with the cloth. Now, I don't know if I'm still leaking, or if it's just the leftovers that I didn't spot earlier. So what I'm going to have to do is go for yet another test drive. Probably longer in duration as well. Mixed driving, another hill, things like that. If I see the oil level increases in that key spot that I was trying to inspect, down there, like in this area here. Try to move this cable. See how there's a little bit of oil pooled up there? And there's like a slight little bead of a leak happening. I have a feeling that I still am leaking. Anyhow, we'll go for a longer test drive. I think I still see some. Kind of in the same area I had before, but a lower, lesser volume. So I'm trying to expose under here. What was happening is that the oil would circulate and kind of get pooling in some of these stupid areas and crevices along down here. Kind of where this plastic piece here meets the engine down in the crevices below all this. And it was splashing like crazy, like over here. And you can see splatter, and I've cleaned it up a number of times with the cloth. Now, I don't know if I'm still leaking, or if it's just the leftovers that I didn't spot earlier. So what I'm going to have to do is go for yet another test drive. Probably longer in duration as well. Mixed driving, another hill, things like that. If I see the oil level increases in that key spot that I was trying to inspect, down there, like in this area here. Try to move this cable. See how there's a little bit of oil pooled up there? And there's like a slight little bead of a leak happening. I have a feeling that I still am leaking. Anyhow, we'll go for a longer test drive. Hey guys, sorry for the lengthy video. So the outcome after verifying that I was still leaking oil turned out it was not even true. It was just remnant oil that was kind of hidden in higher areas, and as the engine was warmer, it was kind of becoming viscous enough that it could make its way back down to the position where I could actually see it. So what I did before going for my last and final test run is I cleaned out all the areas really thoroughly, because I realized I probably messed up. I didn't clean it enough, and did a very thorough cleaning, inspected everything all over again. And this time I went for a combination highway drive and city drive. I'm not going to go through the whole dash cam thing all over again because that was really long. But I wanted you to see the importance of how the torque and having the engine under load was really important, and how the turbo, the gauge actually goes from being a vacuum gauge at the bottom left, and then when it goes into a positive value, the word actually changed to boost. A small hole if you had a leak. The higher the pressure from the turbo, the greater the chances that your balloon or the engine have oil come out. So after having applied extra gasket with the new gasket and some of the key critical areas that needed more, mainly in the back right corner where I had noticed it, and then I put some also on the left where I had to machine or put a helicoil in the bolts. And also when I went back through older footage of when I originally did the job, and this is not part of this video, I had recorded segments when I first took off the top of the engine, and I noticed by the exhaust manifold, the factory had put gasket maker style material there as well, in a heavy dose. It was just about one of the few places that actually had some, to the exception of where the timing belt cover meets with the remainder of the top of the cylinder head where the cap comes on. So anyways, I added more because when I went back and I looked at my former cover, I noticed the gasket had cracks and crevices there. So probably the temperature is stressing that area a lot, so I put more gasket maker there just to give an extra barrier protection and have longevity of this particular gasket. So the other takeaway from all this that I noticed afterwards, when I had first done the job, I had done a whole oil change, which is highly recommended as well. I had found oil at Canadian Tire. It's a Canadian store here, obviously. And the engine called for Dexos 5W30, and I hadn't paid close enough attention. I had seen there was some oil that was synthetic, that was particularly rated for turbo, and I took interest in that. I got to reading that, and I said, oh, that's got to be good for me. But I realized it's 5W20. So in the warmer months, I'm going to have to make an oil change once again, because it's going to be too viscous. It won't be the right viscosity for the summer months. The temperature is going to be too hot. So that may have come to play as well, that the engine oil was just very thin and it managed to squeak through in areas that maybe 530 oil might not have. Again, I'm not an engineer. I'm a home mechanic trying to save a few bucks and leave money where it matters most for my family. So again, take that comment with a grain of salt, but it was interesting, maybe worth considering. So last comment, I took my car onto the expressway and went a little further than where I work, because typically I would drive to work and back and I would notice the smelling of burning oil, things like that. So I figured I'd somewhat mimic the journey, maybe make it a little longer. So I took the way I go into work typically, which is the highway, the expressway. And when I return home, there's too much congestions to get on the off ramps, all this kind of stuff. And then I take back roads. So it actually was the perfect mixture of having highway combination driving again with street level driving. Actually included a number of hills, traffic lights, so you're using the accelerator, boost, vacuum, boost, vacuum, you know, the transition. So when I got home, actually at the halfway point, when I got off the expressway, I pulled into a casino parking lot, which is just on the outskirts of town here. I opened my hood and I was like, oh man, I hope this is good. And best news ever was there wasn't a single drop of oil in all the areas I've been watching this whole time. So next, decided that seeing that the temperature was right up, it was fully operational temperature. I had passed someone on the highway. There's hills on the highway. I figured, well, let's take the back road, come home. And on arrival at home, I got the same exact pleasant surprise. There was no oil in any of the areas that were critical. There was no presence of new oil, so I reassembled everything, put the engine cap or the decorative cover back on, and now that I'm sure the oil's filled up, we're gonna let it ride and see what happens in a couple days. We'll only check the dipstick and keep an open nose for any fumes and stuff that may be bothersome. So I hope this journey that I kind of walked you through might be helpful to some. Changing that gasket and going through like what are all these Cruze problems and how are they all interrelated. It kind of puts things into perspective. One system leans on the other, and I found that a lot of people complain about the PCV valves and the short lifespan of the engines, but I think what happens is these PCV valves fail, spawns off into secondary problems that most people negate or don't know about. Even myself, I didn't know of an impending PCV valve failure, and you know, had I not gotten the engine code, I would have been clueless as to even where to begin. So in many respects that helped out a lot. So I hope this helps. If anyone's interested in knowing the tools, put some comments below. These are one of my first experiences posting anything on YouTube and using stuff to generate videos. So if my quality of the video is not the greatest, please be kind in that respect. I'm just trying to help people and not go through terrible experiences and just learn from my experience. I'm not trying to make any money with this. This is not the point. But hopefully it'll save you a lot of headache, a lot of labor at the garage, a lot of arguing with people about what's wrong. And if you're interested in knowing what the tools are, I can always put some links or reply to your inquiries with what my tools were and go from there. So have a great day, guys. And if there's anything, if you like, click like, I suppose, and have a great day YouTubing. Take care.